Our story kicks off deep in a vast gorge hidden within the forest, the very home of a rabbit who sensed something unusual. He spun around, eyes narrowing at a sudden burst of light radiating from a distant solitary tree. Out of nowhere, a glowing sphere emerged from the tree's trunk, its eyes flaring with brilliance. Suddenly, the protagonist began coughing violently, eyes darting around in confusion. This wasn't his home. Nothing looked familiar. The dense forest surrounded him, strange and unfamiliar. Turning the other way, he tried to piece together how he'd ended up there. Just then, a bee buzzed past, drawing his attention. He noticed vines clinging to him, and in a panic he screamed, mistaking them for his own transformed hair. Were those leaves growing from him? He squinted, trying to make sense of it all. Was this a dream? In disbelief, he sunk back into the tree, choosing to sleep it off, hoping he'd wake up to find everything back to normal. But nothing changed. The tree trunk trembled slightly, and realization dawned. He was the tree. Bent in sorrow, the tree seemed to sigh. The protagonist muttered that the last thing he remembered was the moment he choked. Tsu's eyes went wide in horror. He had died. Emerging again from the tree trunk, he startled the rabbit nearby. He couldn't comprehend it. Why had he been reborn as a tree? Others usually reincarnated into heroic men with impressive harems, not a plant. Tsu thought bitterly that, without arms, he couldn't even show off his one-armed pull-up. A tear slipped down as he lamented his fate. But then, something shifted. His sadness paused as he glanced at the forest. It struck him. Trees don't have eyes, yet he could see everything, each direction, each shadow, every movement. He turned toward the massive gorge. It must have been hundreds of meters deep. Tsu frowned, unsure of his next move. Then he tried to move, and felt something. An odd awareness, not like smell, but like sensing the world. Experimenting, he studied the branches and managed to move one. The others resisted. When he reached for another, a jolt of pain ran through him. He flinched. It felt like trying to stand on legs that had fallen asleep. The roar of a wild beast echoed through the trees. Tsu stiffened. If something strong wandered over, he wouldn't be able to defend himself. The image of a curious woodpecker tearing him apart made him shudder. Then, an airplane passed overhead. He squinted up at it, puzzled about the era he had landed in. But the buzz of bees snapped him out of it. Enraged by their endless swarming, he lashed out with a branch and struck them down. The moment they died, a system notification appeared. Double kill. Tsu blinked in surprise, then smiled proudly. A bit later, he focused on the system windows floating before him. Apparently, he'd earned 0.2 evolution points for eliminating the bees. Another passive ability granted him 0.1 points per day for absorbing sunlight. As he processed this, he noticed his name hadn't changed. Then the system asked, would he like to use his evolution points? He frowned. Just 0.1 points for killing a bee, and only the same for simply existing daily. Not exactly efficient. He considered his options and was presented with a cheap upgrade, strengthening. A branch for 0.1 points. Cautious, Tsu hesitated. He didn't want to blow all his points without a plan. But eerie noises started to creep from the forest, and his instincts screamed at him to prepare. He quickly enhanced 2 branches and took full control over them. The system confirmed the upgrade. With a smirk, Tsu swung the branches in glee, feeling power flow through him. As long as I've got a system, he muttered, I'll be fine. His eyes locked on a nearby hive. With a battle cry, he attacked it. Bees, come meet your fate and become my evolution points. The buzzing grew louder as the bees prepared to defend their home. Half a month passed. Now, Tsu had mastered control of every branch. Squinting in satisfaction, He declared himself a superhero. His gaze landed on a cobblestone nearby. He gathered all his branches and launched them toward it. They halted just short of impact, but the force alone caused a gust of wind so strong that part of the stone shattered. He stared, stunned. Even without direct contact, the power was real. He gently patted himself with a branch and whispered, This could be a deadly move. Foxes, wolves, he could take them now. Looking down at himself, he realized he had grown, not just in strength, but in size. Unlike ordinary trees, his progress was rapid. His roots pulsed with life, drinking in the earth's energy. Sue beamed. Even without effort, he was evolving. Living beings couldn't match a tree's ability to absorb energy like this. And as a tree, he had something else humans could never achieve, an incredibly long lifespan. He stared at his roots, smiling. No illness, no fatigue, no aging. His eye gleamed as he whispered, As I grow stronger, I'll live even longer. One day, I'll be so colossal, they'll call me the World Tree. Chu joyfully twirled his vines through the air, declaring that his journey to godhood had officially begun. No need for jobs, no studying, just raw evolution, but his peace was short-lived. From within his leafy canopy came the sound of tiny chirps. Startled, Chu focused upward and discovered a nest tucked among his branches. Nestled inside were newly hatched chicks. He remembered that a few days ago, he had broken off a branch that was blocking sunlight, apparently creating a perfect spot for a nest. His eyes narrowed as he recognized the species, Paragon falcons. These weren't just any birds, they were medium-sized predators with bodies ranging from 41 to 50 centimeters and wingspans exceeding a meter. During dives, they could reach speeds of 360 kilometers per hour, far outpacing even a cheetah's top speed. Chu absent-mindedly squeezed a bit of resin from a branch, musing on the predators of this world. He glanced out toward the massive gorge and muttered that in a world filled with mutants, he surely wasn't alone. His one glaring weakness, the sky. He had no way to defend himself from above. But the falcon chicks, if he could somehow bond with them, raise them, they could be his eyes and claws in the air. He called himself a human, though his form no longer matched that identity. Still, he had been given a second chance. He wouldn't waste it. Gritting his teeth, he vowed to survive whatever horrors this place had in store for him. As he looked out over the gorge again, chaos reigned in the distance. Packs of airwolves ripped into carcasses on the cliffs, while swarms of giant ants decimated the underbrush. A monstrous being, the Queen of Farts, strolled leisurely through the forest like the trees were blades of grass. Not far away, a squirrel froze mid-snack. As massive fingers grasped a nearby tree and yanked it from the ground, a colossal ape devoured it in a single bite. Another blur of destruction surged through the forest. Trees fell in waves as a massive snake-like beast with an axe-shaped head tore through the landscape, leaving behind a trench of splintered wood. And yet, through it all, a tiny hare darted calmly through the chaos. One such hare made the mistake of hopping too close. Chu snapped a vine forward and caught it mid-air. A message flashed in his mind. He'd earned 0.6 evolution points from the kill. He grimaced. It had been a while since he'd hunted. Without hesitation, he offered the hare to the falcon chicks. They tore into it with ravenous hunger, and though the sight unsettled him, he didn't stop them. A moment later, the system rewarded him again, 0.1 points for sunlight absorption. That put him at a full point. With a deep breath, Chu turned his attention to his roots. He'd enhanced all his branches already. It was time to move on. Gazing at the system panel, he realized none of his 9 roots had been upgraded yet. He was stunned to see that a single root would cost him an entire evolution point. But the thought of what mobility and stability evolved roots could offer thrilled him. After confirming the upgrade, a surge of light erupted beneath the surface. Pain exploded through his being and Tsu screamed. The root forced its way through the earth like a drill, even alarming the chicks overhead. Sweat dripped as the agony ebbed away, and he exhaled shakily. That was the worst pain he'd ever felt, but the reward was worth it. He yanked the new root above ground and coiled it around himself, marveling at its strength. Burying it again, he muttered that he could now command both branches and roots. But what about the trunk? Curious and reckless, he tried shifting his trunk. The moment it moved even slightly, pain worse than anything before surged through him. He cried out, his entire body trembling. Glaring down at himself, he cursed. That pain had eclipsed even the root enhancement. He quickly realized the reinforced roots now protected the trunk like armor for his heart. Losing that would mean death. At least now, the upgraded root could serve as a deadly weapon if needed. He buried the root again for safekeeping. Gazing out across the dense forest, nerves crept in. He was out of evolution points and would need to start gathering them from scratch. As if on cue, a rustle in the bushes drew his attention. Shu tensed. In an instant, he took control of his branches and prepared for whatever might come. Tsu pushed aside the bushes. His eyes fell on a wounded fox lying helplessly on the forest floor. The sight took him by surprise. Instinctively, he reached out a branch to touch the creature, but retracted it immediately. When the fox let out a weak, pained sound, Tsu narrowed his eyes, observing the wound. Its edges were blackened, a clear sign of poison. He muttered to himself, realizing that while this fox could earn him evolution points, it certainly wasn't safe to offer it to the peregrine falcon chicks. Just then, the system flashed a notification. The sap within his branches had healing properties. But once used, the branch would lose its reinforced power and return to a normal state. Weighing the trade-off, Tsu decided to take the risk. If he cured the fox, he could kill it cleanly later and absorb its energy. Pleased with his own cleverness, he guided a branch toward the fox and let a droplet of sap fall onto its wound. The system immediately acknowledged the neutralization of the toxin and the start of the creature's healing process. Tsu grinned, marveling at the branch. "I'm practically a miracle doctor," he said to himself. A few minutes passed. The fox slowly rose to its feet. Tsu aimed his branches at it again, ready to finish the job, but froze as the fox looked at him with glowing, grateful eyes. Then, to his complete shock, it began to rub itself affectionately against his trunk. "Well, what are you doing?" "I'm a tree," Tsu stammered, completely flustered. But the fox showed no sign of stopping, only nestling closer with its eyes half closed, in contentment. His heart softened. Though he had planned to end its life, he couldn't bring himself to harm her now. Gently, he lifted the fox with a vine and began to stroke her fur. She was beautiful. Her eyes gleamed like rubies, and her coat shimmered like silk. Suddenly, the fox's body began to glow. Tsu gasped. The system buzzed again. The fox had begun to evolve, triggered by absorbing his sap. When the light faded, standing before him was a transformed creature. Its fur blazed like living fire, its tail flickering like embers. A new system panel appeared, revealing her updated stats. Tsu couldn't hide his excitement. "She's even more stunning now," he shouted. But then, his gaze fixed on the screen. The system showed her current stage. Curious, he opened his own status panel and discovered that he had unknowingly reached the 9th level of the initial stage, when, "Did that progress bar even show up?" he muttered. He eyed the evolved fox thoughtfully. Despite the gap between them, she was only 5 stages behind him now. More importantly, it dawned on him that his life force didn't just heal. It accelerated growth in other beings too. Eyes. Narrowing, Tsu realized that this ability gave him insight into the power of those around him, and by extension, into his own weaknesses. He sighed. Life had changed drastically. He turned to the fox and asked softly, "How did you end up here? Were you hunted?" Her wound had resembled one from an arrow. The thought of humans unsettled him. despite everything that had happened. He wasn't ready to face people yet. Looking up at the sky, Tsu knew that if a human mistook him for a monster or a demonic tree, he'd stand no chance, not against guns or explosives. His thoughts were interrupted when the fox suddenly darted to the side. Tsu's attention snapped to where she was looking. Two girls were making their way toward him through the trees. His entire being tensed. He instantly retreated, hiding. Within his trunk and controlling the branches with precision, the girls came closer, calling out, "Dad?" Tsu remained still, confused. They said they'd come to visit their father. One of them placed treats at his roots, and they both knelt down, offering prayers. Looking up at the sky, Tsu muttered to himself, "So, their father is buried beneath me." The irony hit him like a wave. From a distance, a small snake watched the strange reunion unfold. The younger girl grabbed an apple and smiled. "Dad never says no to me." Tsu felt a pang of sadness at her words. He wished she would leave quickly, for her own safety. Just then, the little sister tugged on the elder's hand and led her toward the nearby lake. Curious, Tsu extended his awareness and peeked from within the trunk. The younger one was already splashing in the water. The older girl hesitated, then removed her outer garments and stepped into the lake as well. She moved modestly, slowly adapting to the cool water. For the protagonist's entire trunk quivered with frustration. A tree had the audacity to block his view of the lake, and it made him seethe. Looking down at his roots, he made the bold decision to shift slightly, only to be met with a stabbing pain that shot through him, forcing a strained cry to escape. His body stiffened, trembling from the agony, and a wave of disappointment washed over him. Not far from him, the scarlet fox lay still. Tsuyu's mood brightened slightly when he noticed the two girls preparing to leave. Taking a deep breath, he cracked open his trunk just enough to speak, urging them not to return. But one of the girls suddenly paused, turning back. With warm, determined voices, they promised to visit again. The words struck a chord in him, and he found himself unexpectedly moved. From a hidden spot nearby, the young axe snake had been watching everything, silently observing. Time passed. A week later, the gorge roared to life with the cries of battle. Massive bird unleashed a furious scream. Several peregrine falcons, each radiating energy, swooped down in a synchronized high-speed dive, their sights set on the giant bird. But the creature was ready. Shielding itself with its massive wings, it shrugged off their assault with minimal effort. The golden eagle, with eyes full of contempt, stared down its attackers. A system window flickered open before Tsuyu, listing out the eagle's impressive stats. With a blood-curdling shriek, the golden eagle lunged forward. The sound was deafening, stopping the falcons mid-air in stunned hesitation. But before it could press the attack, the scarlet fox leapt from the side, jaws locking into the eagle's back. With a powerful jerk, the eagle threw the fox off like a rag doll. Seizing its chance, it caught the wounded fox in its talons and began a deadly dive, intent on finishing her off. In those final moments, as the eagle spread its beak wide to deliver a fatal blow, its gaze locked onto something in the distance, a tree. It froze. Rage flared in its eyes, sensing a threat. It screeched again, but this time it was cut short. Tsuyu struck with devastating force. A deep, vicious wound split open across the eagle's body. The system's notification appeared instantly, confirming the destruction of a 7th stage golden eagle. A satisfied smile crept across Tsuyu's face as he read the reward: 70 evolution points. He had been nurturing his peregrine falcons with his life essence over the past 2 weeks, and it had paid off. Their strength had surged to new heights in a shockingly short period. As the scarlet fox limped toward him, Tsuyu gave her a nod of approval for her bravery. Then his gaze shifted to the eagle's corpse. "It's been circling for days," he muttered, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He frowned, considering the possibility that his aura had drawn it here. Even at the 7th stage, that bird had inflicted serious damage, and who knew what else might be lurking nearby with similar power. Realizing the danger, Tsuyu's eyes widened in dread. He couldn't let his guard down anymore. This place was teeming with creatures capable of killing him in a single blow. Staring out into the gorge, he made a silent vow. He would grow stronger, strong enough to face anything that dared come his way.